Good morning, friends and enemies. And I'll tell you what, bad day to be an enemy because we are going through my top 40 rookie rankings and I've come prepared, all right? I've watched film on everyone that I'm going to talk about in this video today. I've looked through the numbers. I've seen the combine stats, all right? So we are comparing my personal top 40 rookie rankings, superflex, tight end premium, all of the above, to the industry consensus at this very moment, the morning of March 6th. Industry consensus will take into account Keep Trade Cut, fantasycalc.com, and Sleeper's current ADP. So I took those three resources, I averaged them out, that became the industry consensus, and then I put them against my personal rankings, okay? So we're going to see where the biggest differences currently are. And listen, you have to read the room. There's a lot of people that make content like this that just like say things because the numbers are sitting there. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit of a lag in terms of where the industry rankings are relative to like what we saw for the combine performances. We don't have real rookie draft numbers right now or ADP. Obviously, the NFL draft is still coming. So these are very, very much, written in pencil, as are my rankings. But I wanted to kind of give you guys a primer, a lay of the land of where I currently sit, guys that I'm currently higher on than the industry, etc. So we are going to break it down into some tiers. We're going to talk about the guys I like, the guys I hate, all the above. It's been a minute, so let's tuck the shirts in. So rankings are up on the screen. You could see all the way on the left side of this chart. Those are my rankings, the BDGE rankings. Then you see the next column, that's consensus. Keep Trade Cut, Sleeper, Fantasy Calc, plus minus just means the difference between the two of them. Anyone highlighted in green, I am 5 spots or more higher than the consensus. Anyone highlighted in yellow, orange, red, I am 5 or more spots below consensus, okay? And all the way to the right, you will see the tiers, and I'm kind of equating the tiers to how I see these players in terms of their value for rookie picks. So hopefully that's a little more helpful than, just here's the thing, like just because a player is back-to-back in rankings, this guy's 4, this guy's 5, does not mean that they have the same value. It's similar to when I did my season-long content this year, if you followed along on the main channel, where the tiers ended up becoming like must-start players, strong start, dub flex, L flex, and then like you have to sit. I'd rather have tiers that I think make sense in your mind that like, okay, I would be fine having this guy as my RB2, even though there's a tier of 20 guys there, right? It's stupid to have a guy who's valued at, the ranking of 12 compared to 22 when in your mind they're the same player. You'd feel just as comfortable having them in the rankings. So that's kind of how I wanted to think through these tiers right now. One thing that you will notice on these rankings is a lack of quarterbacks. The QBs on these ranking sites are like way too high. The only real player outside of Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, who I think both of them will probably get heavy draft capital and be picked high in superflex drafts, was Jackson Dart, who has now gotten a lot of steam that he might actually end up being a first-round pick in the NFL draft. So I left him in here. The other ones, the Jalen Milrose and those types of players, I don't think have like real steam in the NFL draft right now. And they were ranked like so high on these websites that it kind of fucked up the plus minus rankings, and the conditional formatting got crazy. And the only players that were going to end up being highlighted would have been the quarterbacks. All right. So I just left them off to clean up the slop a little bit. All right. So when the NFL draft actually happens, then we'll kind of insert the quarterbacks in there and you guys can figure it out on your own. So we start up top. There's nothing too crazy here. We've got Ashton Genty as the 1. I've got Cam Ward as the 2 and Omarion Hampton as the 3. All of them in my eyes right now are worth early firsts in that range. Genty's really in a tier by himself. Obviously, I think if you're trying to move him for something, it's going to be really, really hard to get that 101 from anybody. You're going to have to give up something worth a first-round Dynasty startup pick. Genty's a clear 101 in almost every single draft just because of the lack of competition at other positions. Like you don't have a clear alpha wide receiver. You have Cam Ward, but I don't think people really look at Cam Ward as an elite prospect relative to like other quarterback classes. So Ward to me is looking more and more like the number 1 overall pick, number 2 overall pick at worst. So if that's the case, I'm not going to overthink it. A quarterback in Superflex going to be my 102. Omarion Hampton, huge riser from the combine, 3-down skill set, 3-down size, getting mocked more and more in the first round. You have a first-round rookie, and if he's someone that gets picked in the back part of the draft, that's probably meaning he's going to be picked to a good team. So talking about a really well-rounded running back going to a good team with first-round draft capital. He's someone that I think is just going to continue to go higher and higher and higher. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw a lot of people take Omarion Hampton over Cam Ward just from a talent perspective, and or if they already have their quarterback situation figured out for their superflex team. So Omarion Hampton's going to keep rising up the rankings. Next up, we've got a little tier of just Tet McMillan and Tyler Warren. To me, they're outside of that top tier, but they are the two best players at their positions in this draft class. I think both of them will likely get top 10 draft capital. I think Tet McMillan is kind of sliding a little bit just because he did not perform at the combine, and you had all these other receivers perform, so they're kind of like top of mind, but it is what it is. I still think he's a top 10 pick, most likely. Same with Tyler Warren. So nothing crazy there. The first green that we will see on the board is Mr. Matthew Golden out of Texas. We have a tier of 4 players here. We have Matthew Golden, Shedeur Sanders, Travion Henderson, and Quinshon Judkins. All right. For me, they are mid to late first round picks in terms of tier swaps. So Golden was a little bit tough for me to tier because I have him ranked really high. And I know people are going to be like, oh, his combine shot him up there. I tweeted out his ranking of he was my 6th overall player prior to the combine. His film was some of the smoothest, most fluid route running I have possibly ever seen. He is an unbelievable athlete. He's a little bit lacking in terms of like the production profile, in terms of like numbers, but anyone who watches his film, it's clear as day. He's going to be a first round pick for the route running ability, plus what he did at the combine. Now, I think because his analytical profile is lacking a little bit, there's a really good chance that most people doing these rankings are going to throw him into that late first tier. So I kind of wanted to throw him in there because that I feel like is what the value of the market is most likely going to be. Like you could see consensus has him at 16. That to me is just a product of it lagging behind in terms of like the industry rankings. I think more often than not, he's going to be a first round rookie pick in Dynasty drafts. But to me, he's just unbelievable on film. Daniel Jeremiah, I saw this tweet after I watched the film, also agrees here. I'm not going to take too much time on the film here, otherwise this video would take forever, and I'm going to make a dedicated video, I promise, to some Matthew Golden film, but, I just wanted to give you guys a quick, glimpse into what I'm talking about as just a pure route runner from Matthew Golden. This is a game against Georgia. Great defense, obviously. This is a game that Texas really struggled. Matthew Golden, in my opinion, really did not have trouble against these cornerbacks. So you'll see him kind of highlighted in yellow. And yes, I've switched my mouse for y'all. This is a big yellow one so you can see him. He's out here running. Like, you'll notice his start-stop speed. Like when he's cutting, going from motion to running a straight line to cutting inside, it not only doesn't decelerate, it almost accelerates. Like when you watch him run, he just looks so fluid. So just watch this route again. Straight, boom. Like the amount of separation that he gains on an inside cut is sickening. Like watch the step he takes right before he cuts into. Like he's running full speed, of course. This is a 4.29 guy. Now, listen, I know he outran Isaiah Bond, but play speed-wise, Bond is fucking of a rocket. He's faster than Matthew Golden, no doubt about it. As he's progressing, he's running. Watch the jab step he takes this way to get separation inside. Boom. Like that, he turned the cornerback around, ended up being a nice play. Texas is on the goal line here. He's one-on-one, just tight coverage. This is like tight space. If you're a good route runner, you can get separation here. So just look what he does to this cornerback. The whip route is so hard to run. We were at the field last week, actually, because we got our combine coming up and we're playing a 7-on-7 game. We were running whip routes, and it is impossible to dig your hips this low and be able to cut back outside and the cornerback's on the floor again. You'll notice that throughout his tape. He's just putting cornerbacks that, like, they turn into ballerinas. So watch this one more time, the whip route here. Didn't get the ball, obviously, but the route is pure bliss. This is a simple comeback route here where he stops on a dime. You'll notice that Quinn Ewers just like never throws him the fucking ball, but he's always open. This guy just loves checking down to the running back. There's nothing he likes more than that. Okay, here's another one where he's seeing man coverage at the line of scrimmage. You got to beat him. You got to have a release package. His feet are so quick that it's got a little stutter, gets past him. You know how hard it is to run an inside route and get behind your cornerback to run that? Like, he doesn't even break off inside. He breaks off outside to make a long-winded route, and he still gets open by 3 yards. And again, cornerback on the floor. Doesn't get the ball, but you know how that is. So just watch this route again. A little stutter step at the start, breaks outside, and then breaks inside. So he's up here, one-on-one coverage again. And Matthew Golden's in-breaking routes are quite possibly the most impossible thing in college football to cover. Again, quick feet on the release package, breaks in, inside, leverage, inside. Like, you take for granted just how smooth this route is. His tempo is it's so elite. Here's another example of that pretty much same play. He's on the outside here. His feet are so quick that he's like so easily able to gain this inside leverage on the cornerback. Like, it's a stutter. And then he's able to use his body to shield the cornerback to the outside for his in-breaking route. Like, stutter, gets him inside, and then the cut is deadly. Like, he's open again. Like, separation is crazy, but Ewers throws it down there. Yeah, terrible ball. It is what it is. Here's Golden lining up from the slot here. Just crazy ball concentration. Really good usage of the hands at the top of the route there too, to kind of like bump off the guy, give him a little mushroom power to speed up. Just a quick slot fade. Okay, enough of that. So Matthew Golden, mid-late round first for me. I think he'll probably be the least value in terms of like the industry and what they think of him. But him, Shedeur, Travion, and Quinshon Judkins are all mid to late firsts. For me, a lot of these running backs, like you see Henderson, you see Judkins, you see Caleb Johnson here. They're all, for me, just going to kind of be broken up by what happens in the draft. Like if one of them goes to like the Raiders with similar draft capital to a guy that goes to the Chargers, I'm going to take the Chargers player most likely because I don't see a huge talent difference in most of these guys. Like Caleb Johnson's film was my favorite. Travion Henderson is easily the most explosive of the three, but Judkins has real size, blew the combine away, and will probably get very, very early day 2 capital. But I wouldn't be surprised if all these guys end up being top 40 or 50 picks here. So I'm just going to wait till they kind of get broken down by what happens in the NFL draft. And then you have this group of receivers here after Caleb Johnson: Emeka Egbuka, Luther Burden, Travis Hunter, Colston Loveland. So they are dudes that are likely going to get first-round draft capital, if not definitely getting first-round draft capital. So it's like those receivers who tend to go in the 18 to 25 range, can compete to be the wide receiver 1 on the team, end up having a relatively good hit rate. Colston Loveland will be a top pick as well. If he goes to a really good landing spot, he can move up my rankings. Like if he goes to Denver with Sean Payton, kind of like plays a Joker role, I think that could be cool. Travis Hunter, again, like I don't think I could tell you anything fun or cool here that you haven't heard before about like what he's going to be at the next level. I think most people assume he's going to be a cornerback. It's going to be hard to learn 2 playbooks, both the offensive and the defensive, at a very high volume. So until we see otherwise, like I'm probably going to label him as a low volume wide receiver. But again, a guy that talented, like there's no way you could let him drop into the second. So he ends up being like, I have 14 players here, as you could see in the tiers, that I would label first round picks in rookie draft. So you kind of trade accordingly. And I don't actually have anyone in the early second of my tiers, because I think these guys are simply too good to fall into the second value-wise. And I think Sampson, Scatabo, Trey Harris, and Jaden Higgins are all really tantalizing, high upside prospects that I really like, but I feel very far from like saying that they're sure things at the next level. So Sampson's a dude that I have a lot higher than consensus right now. He's number 15 in my rankings. He is the running back from Tennessee, undersized, but this dude can fucking fly. His game reminds me of Bucky Irving. Like he's a very, very good inside runner despite being undersized. And again, his speed is legit. He didn't run at the combine, but he'll run in the 4.3s. He is a rocket on the field as well. So really like Dylan Sampson. He's someone I think is going to get pushed down the board just because of his size. But when you watch the film, his inside running ability is really, really good. Scatabo's a beast. He's a dog. Receiver, 3 down back. runs a little bit wildly, but I still think between the numbers, the production, what I saw in film too, I think he's a good running back that can move both laterally. He's agile, but obviously delivers a blow. He's super powerful. So I like Cam a lot. Trey Harris and Jaden Higgins. I'm way higher on Jaden Higgins than the consensus right now. Consensus has him at 35. I'm all the way up at 18. Jaden Higgins is a long, lean, 6'4", 210, 215, like real X wide receiver. Him and someone else I'll talk about in a second, Jalen Noel, the other Iowa State wide receiver, their quarterback play was horrendous watching the film. They were the only two teammates in the entire country to go over 1,000 yards receiving this year. Higgins to me feels like a T. Higgins type, where I think the hype, he did really, really well at the combine. He ran like a 4.47 for someone who's 6'4", 215. And someone with that size and that speed, and what I saw on film, he's a very, very smooth player over the intermediate part of the field. I think he could be a real problem, like a high-end wide receiver 2 at the next level, if not play the X-alpha role for a team that drafts him early day 2. So I think you'll see the hype for him continue to shoot up draft boards. So in the late second tier, you've got a whole group of dudes here. Starting at Jackson Dart, depending on draft capital, if he falls into day 2, he'll probably move down my rankings. After him, I've got Damian Martinez, running back out of Miami, Bashal Tutin, running back out of Virginia Tech, Isaiah Bond, Texas receiver, Xavier Restrepo, Miami receiver, Jalen Noel, Iowa State receiver, Harold Fannin Jr., and Elijah Arroyo, the two number 3 and 4 tight ends after Warren and Colson Loveland, the big, highly touted blue chip tight end prospects here. Those are all late second picks to me. These are all guys that I really like their film. Damian Martinez, I think, is probably overall the most underrated player in rookie drafts right now. His consensus ranking is 32. He is a Miami running back that has size of a 3-down workhorse, 220 pounds. His film is phenomenal. He can make guys miss via lateral ability. He can make guys miss via just raw power. Like, he is someone that I am really intrigued to see what the draft capital is. And again, for the 75th time, draft capital is going to be a big, mover here. Like, if Dylan Sampson ends up going in day 3, I'll move him down. If Cam Scatabo goes in round 2, he'll probably jump Sampson and all of the above. So my personal take on their films are only going to go so far in rookie drafts as per the draft capital. But Damian Martinez, I like this film more than Bashal Tutin. Tutin, obviously the biggest riser from the NFL Combine. Guy ran low 4.3, so his speed is unbelievable. A little bit undersized, like 205, 206 pounds, but I don't think that's really that big of a problem in today's day and age. His running style is, he's not someone where you like put on the film and you're like, holy shit, he is Devon Achane, Chris Johnson levels of fast. Despite running a 4.32, it kind of sneaks up on you. Like, he has home run plays where you're like, okay, he's got legit long speed. I don't think on a down-to-down basis he plays that way. He plays more like Kyron Williams, where he's a little bit undersized and he runs pretty angry, but he obviously has that burst with that type of athletic testing. So Bashal Tutin, obviously the consensus here is extremely lacking. He's all the way down at 45. We have him at 24, so late second round pick. Isaiah Bond, the undersized, speedy receiver out of Texas, ran the 4.39. Xavier Restrepo and Jalen Noel, I think, are really, really, really good players. I think for the most part, they're likely going to have to land in situations where they could play the slot, where a team plays 3 wide receiver personnel often. JSN's obviously kind of the slot guy there in Seattle, but with Tyler Lockett getting released, maybe one of these guys goes to Seattle to like shore that back up. But a team that plays 11 personnel at a very high rate would, if Cincinnati took one of these guys, right, and they had Jamar Chase, they had T. Higgins, assuming T. Higgins is back, obviously under the franchise tag. If they took Restrepo, if they took Jalen Noel as their slot wide receiver, these are both guys that can fly. These are both guys that are really, really fluid athletes, very quick-footed. They have really good release packages at the line of scrimmage. I think Xavier Restrepo has really, really reliable hands, but I don't know that his route running is really good enough to succeed on the outside at a high level, especially with like physical contact that kind of pushes him out of his comfort zone. But his like body control, his contested catch ability over the middle is like elite. But again, looking at the numbers here, like he ran out of the slot over 90% of his routes. His yak per reception, 7.3, yards per target, yards per reception, drop rate, on-target catch rate, like all really, really highly ranked amongst his class. I saw a tweet going back to, I'm not sure how far back this goes. I want to say at least 10 years, but the only day 1 or 2 guys in the NFL draft that have ran over 90% of the routes from the slot in college were Christian Kirk, KJ Hamler, and Elijah Moore. So that's the type of, player that he could be. Actually, you know what? I said like Seattle or Cincinnati, but the Falcons would be a fucking phenomenal fit for either of these players. Yeah, Restrepo is the all-time leader at Miami in receptions and receiving yards. Actually, despite them having like an unbelievable alumni list of wide receivers, he is the only player ever, the only receiver ever to have back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. And again, same thing with Noel here. 70% from the slot, yards per out run versus zone, which I think is a little bit more applicable for slot receivers, 3.51. 5'10", 195, ran a 4.39 elite burst score. So really big fan of Jalen Noel. His quick twitch ability is just very, very eye-popping on screen. After that, we move to early third. I've got Ollie Gordon and DJ Giddens here, two bigger backs, 220 plus, that I think could be committee backs at the next level. They've got the size to be like a thumper, like a Zach Moss type, where like, sure, they could have stretches of periods where I think they show some fantasy production, but overall, I don't know how high their ceiling actually is from a talent perspective. So this next tier, we've got mid thirds. We've got Jordan James, Devin Neal, Elic Ayumanor, I think I'm saying that right, wide receiver from Stanford, and Gunnar Helm, the Texas tight end here. Jordan James, he's kind of an undersized running back from Oregon. We've heard that before. He runs hard. He runs well. He can do a bit of everything, but being undersized, I think he'll probably be pigeonholed a little bit, and his combine numbers, his athleticism are subpar at best. Same thing with Devin Neal. I think Devin Neal's film was a little bit underwhelming for me. I didn't feel like he had any really, really high-end traits, and then his athleticism also followed that. And he's actually the biggest discrepancy in rankings here. Devin Neal was like a high name going into the combine. People really liked him for whatever reason. Again, I don't really follow these prospects throughout the year. I just watch film afterwards, and I have my own personal take, which is why a lot of my rankings are probably vastly different from what you see on Twitter and the industry, whatever. But yeah, Devin Neal's all the way up at 18. Again, I have him as a mid-third round pick. Elic Ayumanor, he's getting a lot of love right now. Extremely athletic, high upside guy. Got all of the traits. I still think he's very raw. I don't think he's a great route runner. For his size, he's 6'2", 205, 210. He does not play his size at all on the outside. I think at the catch point, he's really, really soft, and he very, very rarely actually comes down with the ball. He's not a dude I think quarterbacks are going to be able to trust at the next level. He's not a dude that you throw up and you're like, okay, this is a 50-50 ball, and because my receiver is really good, it's more like a 65-35 or 70-30. I didn't see that on film at all. So he's someone that I'm lower on than consensus. Gunnar Helm, getting into the late third, we got Jack Beck, Mason Taylor, RJ Harvey, Tez Johnson, Trevor Etienne. Jack Beck's actually the only guy I have not watched film of yet on this list. Mason Taylor, I actually thought Mason Taylor was cool. He reminded me of Pat Freiermuth. He's not going to blow you away with any athleticism. He's like the typical inline tight end, but his hands are unbelievable. This dude is he never drops the ball. He might have the most reliable hands on this entire list. I'm talking about receivers, tight ends, everybody. Mason Taylor's hands might be the most elite trait on this entire group of prospects. Any elite trait any of them have. We've got RJ Harvey. I've talked about, I didn't really like him. Some of his film versus Colorado, it's crazy. Again, I'm not going to get into it because it would make this video probably too long. RJ Harvey's film, I think he went for about $160 total yards from scrimmage. He had a big breakaway play in the receiving game. Then he went for $160 versus Colorado. His ground game in that particular game might be some of the worst film I've ever seen. His just vision at the line of scrimmage and his propensity to just bounce runs outside when there are holes in the middle, very problematic for me. It was very similar to watching the film of Trey Benson, Marshawn Lloyd, Jalen Wright last year. We did a bunch of film breakdowns on those guys, and that was a huge concern for me with them. It's every time there was big holes in the middle, they had this propensity to take their athleticism and say, hey, I'm an NFL athlete. I have superior athleticism to these guys. I'm just going to bounce it outside and beat them to the outside. And that can work. But if the defender's playing the edge and stays where they're supposed to stay, which happens at the NFL level, you're not breaking it outside, and the speed is much higher at the next level. So that is my concern for RJ Harvey. I'm sure eventually I'll get into the film. All right, fine. If I'm gonna talk all that shit about RJ Harvey, I guess we gotta show you a little bit since y'all begging for it. I guess we can look at the very first play of the game. He motions into the backfield. This is not that big of a deal, but again, I think you could just kind of take the yards here, most likely put your head down and go for it there, rather than you see this guy has leverage to the right here. His first instinct is to bounce this immediately outside rather than picking up the 3 or 4 that this play was probably designed to get. So he immediately bounces it and realizes, yep, the edge defender's there. There's nowhere to go. Let me just now get 0 yards instead of the 3 or 4. Here's another play that here's like what I want people to take away when they're watching film. Like if you just watch this raw, you're going to say, oh, sick play by RJ Harvey, right? He's in the backfield. And he does good things. Again, like this is the problem with a lot of these guys who are really athletic is like they have the traits to make amazing plays and amazing highlights. However, again, it's very similar to like a DeAndre Swift where when you're that type of player with like bad vision and you try to win everything via athleticism, that catches up to you. Him, Miles Sanders, like you can have one good season if you're in a really good offense, but more often than not, you'll flame out. So RJ Harvey's in the backfield here, gets the handoff. Like you see here, there's a very clear hole up the middle here. And his first instinct is to go completely horizontal, right? There's this hole right here. His first instinct is to go horizontal. Again, at the next level, there is a defender setting the edge here that would just not allow that to happen. And they did have a safety coming down to set the edge, and he just misses the tackle. You want to call that RJ Harvey forcing the miss tackle? Cool. I just like that hole is just something you have to take. You can't see that hole and then just immediately bounce it horizontally. Here's another play just like that one where it's like cool result, but I think it was a bad process. Like you're UCF, you're playing against shitty competition. Colorado was letting up 50 points a game. So here, again, like he has the ball here. He's clearly looking forward. This blocker has leverage that way. Both of them have leverage that way. This blocker has leverage that way. There's a hole that's about to open up that's massive right here. Instead, he decides to cut it back this way, where it looks like a huge hole from the other angle. But as you're looking at it here, you have this edge defender who's already gotten past his guy. So he's going to take the edge here. You have this linebacker that's going to fill the hole here. Like, I get it. Again, like, he does make a cut that gets him past this guy, but normally the edge defender, like, one of these two guys is going to stay committed to that run and be able to stop that at the next level so easily. Whereas the other hole up the middle was, for me, extremely evident. If you have 4.4 speed, like, you're going to be able to get skinny here. Look at this fucking hole right here that's developed. You're going to be able to get skinny here and break up there for 12, 15, maybe fucking 40 yards. Here's another play where, I mean, he gets it in the backfield, and it's just horizontal, 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 horizontal. Like, how horizontal can I go? Where I think at any point you can kind of just like put your head down and gain the 3 or 4 that you should get, rather than, again, like right here, we're going horizontal, then more, then more, then more. It's always like more outside solves the problem. Usually not. Where it's like, I get why you're bouncing outside because you're an athlete, but if anyone's setting the edge here, you're done. Like, look at what's going on in the middle. There is so much hole action here. You just have to make one guy miss and you're gone. Like, look in here. You have so much open space there. And I get it. There's open space over there too, but I'm telling you, at the next level, like, these defenders don't fuck up and they don't allow those bullshit outside runs. Like, he gets it, and immediately it's like, let's not look at this hole here. Let's not look at how all my blockers have leverage that way. This one is that way. Instead, let's just go completely horizontal that way. His eyes are like, they're like lizards. Like, they only look that way. Here's another play. It's the last play I'll do. I'm sorry, RJ. He gets the ball up the middle, and there's a hole developing here. And then there's a guy right here that's like defending the outside. And he says, no, I'm going to cut away from that hole and just try to beat him outside again, which, you know, it works. But I promise you, when you're not playing Colorado, this will not work. So again, you have him getting the handoff. He gets here. This is like his decision point. And I just don't understand how you see this blocker with leverage that way. All these blockers are pushing out that way. You decide to run straight at the only free defender here. Why not just take that? Like, yeah, sure, this guy's coming, but an easy stiff arm to him that accelerates you this way, that feels like a touchdown. But instead, he wants to cut it back. This guy misses a terrible tackle. I'm like, sure, yeah, RJ Harvey made a miss, but like, I hate that. So yeah, RJ baby, what are we Don't. Yeah, he's listen, he's good in open space. He is shifty. He's a good pass catcher, and he's a very explosive athlete. But very often we see those types of athletes have spurts of goodness, but very unreliable over the long term. Yeah, then we have Tez Johnson. I want to like Tez Johnson. He's like Tank Dell. Cool route runner for sure, but 155 pounds at the combine, ran like a 4.55 in that range. So you're talking about a really small, like Tutu Atwell type small. Tank Dell has 10 pounds on Tez Johnson, which feels a little bit problematic. And then you have Trevor Etienne at the bottom. All right, there you have it. We've got the top 40 rookie rankings. I think I did 40. Maybe I did 38. Maybe I did 39. Maybe I did 42. I don't know, but allow me to watch a little bit more film before I continue ranking. But we're early. We got a couple months before the NFL draft. If you enjoyed this video, let me know what other types of rookie videos you would like to see me continue to harp on. All right. And if you enjoyed, make sure you hit the button that looks like this. Subscribe to thy channel if you are new here, and I will see you in a few days. Don't miss me too much.